Father to son, father to son. Good morning, everybody. MikesMMAPicks here with your Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Oddsbreaker. We're back for UFC Vegas 27, where we have Cody-Garbrandt taking on Rob Font. We have a number of fights expected to finish here. Some interesting matchups, especially if you're playing DraftKings. Take a look at grapplers versus strikers. A few grapplers here are lined as slight underdogs. A bunch of money hangs in the balance. Some significant prize pools are available depending upon the DFS format that you are playing, the platform you're playing on. So let's get to it here with the first fight of the day. These fights begin at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, folks. Damir Ismagulov, 22-1 record, has been in there with legitimate competition and has come up big. Doesn't make many mistakes out there. 22-1 record, minus 580 betting favorite with a DraftKings price of $9,500. Interesting, though, because this fight is expected to go to a decision. He's taking on Rothwell-Alves, who last time out missed weight big time against Pat Sabatini. I was looking forward to that matchup. Perhaps they'll run it back at some point. Rothwell-Alves, 19-9 record. He has 7 TKO victories, 7 submissions on his record, fighting out of MMA Masters. Some cardio issues, plus 380 underdog, 6,700 in DraftKings. This fight is taking place at 155, and if you watched weigh-ins yesterday, you'll see that Rothwell-Alves came in at 154 looking to prove a point, but he is massive for the weight class. So the way I see this fight playing out, Damir Ismagulov is looking to keep this fight at distance, pick Alves apart. Footwork is on point. As I previously mentioned, Ismagulov does not make many mistakes, and I see him putting on another spectacular performance here. And it depends on your definition of spectacular, but because it could be potentially a flawless victory, a victory where he comes out completely unscathed as he did in the Moises fight. Give me Ismagulov to win, and take a look at that points prop out there. One thing I'd like to also say is that the judging recently has been atrocious, especially if you look at the last 9 months or so. There's been 1 or 2 decisions on practically every card where the scorecards, everybody's raising their eyebrows, wondering how the hell did that happen? So could be a dangerous proposition there, no pun intended, but that is a prop. If you're looking to squeeze out some of that juice, you can get that bet down. Next up, second fight of the night, where we have Yancy Medeiros, household name, 15-7 record, plus 100 underdog, DraftKings price of 7,800, taking on Damir Hadzovic. Hadzovic coming in 13-6 record. The Bosnian Bomber, minus 130 betting favorite, DraftKings price of 8,400. These two should come out here looking to sling leather. Medeiros does have the better ground game, so be aware of that. Though, when you run back the tape, Medeiros has taken a bit of damage over his career. I'm leaning Hadzovic in this particular spot, if you want to have a good laugh, watch the Renato Moicano-Hadzovic fight. Damir gets submitted rather quickly, and Moicano wants to continue fighting. And then Hadzovic asks Moicano, if you want to continue to fight, then don't submit me. Interesting exchange right there. So I don't think we're going to see a submission in this spot. Mediros, Hawaiian banger. I think he is at a slight disadvantage here against the crisper Hadzovic. So give me Damir Hadzovic. Third fight of the evening, where we have some question marks here on a fighter in Xiaonan-Sha taking on Josh Culibao. Josh Culibao, Filipino-Australian fighter, 8-1-1 overall record. Looked very slim on the scales. Has previously fought at 155 pounds, but he had no business being up there against Jalen Turner. 8-1-1 record, minus 260 betting favorite. So we've got a pretty wide line here. DraftKings price of 9,100. Surprisingly, this fight is lined to go the distance, but I would not be surprised here to see a finish. Xiaonan-Sha is primarily a grappler by trade, has been finished via strikes. Culibao's coming in with a significant reach advantage. I also think that Sha, if this fight takes place at range, is going to have a significant advantage in regards to power, in regards to fluidity, but in a smaller octagon, is he going to be able to find this space? Sha, Chinese fighter. This fight does take place at 145 pounds. You watch Sha's previous fights. I spent a great deal of time breaking down his fights behind the scenes. He has yet to fight at featherweight, and Sha, I envision him thinking that he has a big-time grappling edge if he forces Culibao against the cage and drains him. That could potentially play out here. This is one of those grappler-striker matchups. You've seen Culibao struggle on the ground against Jalen Turner, and even against Jourdain, there were times where Jourdain does not have a great grappling game and was able to have his way in the third round with Culibao, though. I think at some point Culibao is going to catch Sha. I would look at that inside the distance prop and the KO prop for Culibao. I'll be picking Culibao to win, though this is one of those spots where if you're playing the minus 260 on Culibao and Sha comes out here and thwarts his game, that is not what you want. So I'll be picking Culibao and inside the distance. Next up, we have Victor Rodriguez fighting out of Alaska. 7-3 record, plus 290 underdog here with a DraftKings price of 6,900, taking on Bruno Silva, who comes in with an 11-5-2 record, but that record is rather deceiving here. Minus 390 betting favorite and a price tag in DraftKings of 9,300. This fight does take place at 125 pounds. You've got Victor Rodriguez, who has fought all the way up at featherweight before. Rodriguez, one thing when I was watching his fights, he comes out like hell on wheels early, looks to try to get either his grappling game going or brawling game going. The wheels completely fall off the longer the fight goes for him. He can be a dominant force early. Rodriguez, though, if you check out his resume, he has yet to see a third round in his professional mixed martial arts career. I think that is very telling here. Now he's coming in at 125 pounds, coming off of the loss to Yanez. Bruno Silva has been in there with Casey Kenny, Dvorak, Ulanbekov, and others. In this spot, Silva seems to have turned the corner. One thing I enjoyed seeing was he was the first fighter to the scales here. I think barring Silva getting clipped early, He wins this fight much more often than that, and I expect this fight to end inside the distance. I'll be picking Bruno Silva, and he could potentially do this via submission or by knockout. So give me Bruno Silva inside the distance. Next up, we have another Silva, Claudio Silva, who's getting up there in age, taking on Court McGee. Claudio Silva coming in with his 14-2 record. I wish I would have seen Claudio Silva much more active over the last few years. Minus 115 betting favorite. I apologize. This fight is a pick'em across the board. Right now, you've got Court McGee coming in also at minus 115. This is an interesting fight for DraftKings because you're going to see Court McGee, if he looks to stall Silva against the fence, which he typically does in many of his fights. McGee is not a high point producer in DraftKings, but when he does win, he's been known to rattle the standings up in DK. Silva is a high level black belt, and if he gets taken down, you've seen even in the Nordin Taleb fight, he is very, very slick out there. McGee is going to look to try to wear Silva down. Silva, you watch the tape, his overall, his game is not very impressive, but his submission game and his will to win keeps him in fights. The wheels have fallen off recently. I believe that's dictated and baked into this line right now. I'll be picking Claudio Silva in this spot, but very reluctantly. McGee has a game plan that could pose Silva big problems, especially if he's able to drain Silva down the stretch. I think that is a path to victory for Court McGee, but Claudio Silva at this stage in his career, I think he's the more dangerous fighter. Court McGee, you go back to the fight against Carlos Condit and wonder why he never shot for those takedowns when he had a clear grappling advantage. And that could potentially play out in this spot. But give me Claudio Silva. I think that he's the more dangerous fighter at this stage in his career. And this fight may shock some folks if we see a submission, though. You have to be careful betting on something that you haven't seen before, and we have never seen Court McGee submitted. So I'll be picking Claudio Silva. Next up, we've got roly-poly Chris Barnett coming in, 21-6 record. Congrats to Chris Barnett for making weight here. Plus 270 underdog, $7,000 in DraftKings, taking on Ben Rothwell, who this is another aging fighter here, 38-13 record. Look at that price tag, minus 360 on a heavyweight who has not looked great, and a DraftKings price of 9,200. This is another fight where I see you could potentially see Ben Rothwell pushing Barnett up against the cage, starting to wear him down. Barnett, though, has a very low center of gravity, very flashy out there, lots of knockouts, has beaten many cans on the regional scene. This fight's a heavyweight fight, so there is some variance that could come into play here. I'll be picking Ben Rothwell here. I think that he is definitely the more seasoned veteran who has a wider variety and skill set, and his game is proven at this level. Barnett's flashy, but that reach disadvantage is probably coming into play here. Barnett looks like he's got the frame of somebody who could potentially make welterweight, but he's up here tipping the scales at the 260s, and we've seen him up in the 300 range before. So give me Ben Rothwell here, and I could potentially see Rothwell winning this fight via decision. Next up, fascinating bout here where we have Bill Algeo coming in against Ricardo Ramos. Bill Algeo, 14-5 overall record. We saw him run into some tough times on the Contender Series, though that Spike Carlisle victory really helped right the ship. He's coming in here with a head of steam. He's got great cardio. He can push a pace, and that's something that could potentially cause Ricardo Ramos some problems. Ricardo Ramos, I do believe, is the more well put together fighter, has a better ground game than Algeo, despite Algeo coming in with his black belt. I believe Ricardo Ramos, his back taking ability could be a big problem for Algeo here. I think the striking is a wash. I even favor Ricardo Ramos in the striking realm, but a big problem for Ramos is that he tends to wilt late in fights, and we've seen him crack and mentally broken. The Lerone Murphy fight was one, and we've seen it other times. Even on the regional scene, he's fought out of Team Alpha Male, which I have liked in the past. Seems to split camp. Algeo coming in as the slight favorite here. I'm going to lean Ricardo Ramos. I think that if Algeo had more finishing ability, that would be more of a threat here. I know Ramos, he's prone to getting put in tough spots at the end of his fights, but I think we're going to see Ramos come out here and be very sharp early, especially in the smaller octagon. Not much room for Algeo to be evasive. Give me Ricardo Ramos in this spot. And I believe the line has been moving slightly to the point where Ramos is an underdog here. The problem is, though, you're taking a risk on a fighter in Ramos who wilts down the stretch versus a fighter who seems to want it more and just fights smarter at the end of fights with Bill Algeo. He does, I believe the arrow's pointed up for Algeo, but his skill set is not there yet. So give me Ricardo Ramos. Next up, wow. Interesting fight where we have Jack Hermansson taking on Edmen-Shahbazyan. Edmen-Shahbazyan, one loss on his record. So you got to wonder how our fighter is going to return after tasting defeat for the first time. Jack Hermansson also, you want to look at a fighter who will fight for your money as long as he stays conscious. That is Jack Hermansson. 21-6 record, -150 betting favorite, 8,900 in DraftKings. Problem with Hermansson is he has a tendency to not eat punches well. And we saw the Vettori fight. He took a lot of damage in that particular bout. He has a clear grappling edge here against Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan is the better striker, is the more devastating finisher. I think there's a high probability this fight ends inside the distance. I think that we are going to see either Hermansson gets cracked early and taken out of there, or Jack Hermansson lands the takedowns and wraps up a submission. Really, that's the way I see this fight playing out. Jack Hermansson did look like the larger, more well put together fighter on the scales in this bout. I'm leaning slightly Jack Hermansson, but I think this is a potentially dangerous spot for him here, because Edmen-Shahbazyan could potentially cause big problems if he's able to start landing strikes. It's only been a few months since Hermansson fought Marvin Vettori. Ho ho ho. Look at this. Boys, welcome. Great to see you, my brother. Thank you for coming on board. Great to have everybody here so early. I like to get this breakdown video out. Early bird gets the worms, man. Good morning, Myron. Good to see you. Hello, Marcus. Marcus likes Hermansson over Edmund. Yes, we've seen Edmund break against Brunson. We know that is a hole in Edmund-Shahbazyan's game, and I don't think he's had enough time to rectify that deficiency. This is an ongoing trend that we've seen. You can't bank on something that hasn't played out before in fights, and also you can't bank on a fighter shoring up a major deficiency in their repertoire here. So in my particular, this is just one man's opinion here, but I think that we have a volatile situation in this spot. And I think a better spot to pick would be that this fight doesn't end up going the distance. Somebody may potentially get put out here. And also in DraftKings, somebody's going to score big, because you look at that control time, and there are fighters up and down this card where control time could potentially be an issue. All right. Next up, we have a last-minute replacement. Juan Camilo Ronderos coming in with a 4-0 record, which is a little deceiving because he has a 9-0 record at the amateur level, and you watch his amateur fights, and he actually fought some legit competition there. He's taking on David Dvorak, who is a seasoned veteran with very, very high fight IQ. 19-3 record, minus 505 record. You also look at Damir Ismagulov. He's another fighter who has extremely high fight IQ. Dvorak, 8,800 in DraftKings. Was supposed to be fighting Paiva. Paiva, I think we'll see Paiva actually move up a weight class at some point in the near future to bantamweight. Ronderos, interesting fighter here. So you've got an Extreme Couture fighter who has a split decision win over Eric Shelton. A fighter who, if you go back and you watch his title fight against Elliott on one of the regional promotions, he was getting run through on the ground, was losing, getting out wrestled. Dvorak is not a wrestler. He's going to look to strike here. But you saw Ronderos overcome some adversity, actually snap his opponent Elliott's arm in that particular bout. Ronderos came in overweight in this spot. I think that is going to be an issue. The longer this fight goes, you have a Dvorak who is capable of maintaining a pace for a solid 3 rounds here. Both of these fighters are familiar with each other. I believe they've trained with each other at some point. I'll be picking David Dvorak in this spot. I don't think that's a stretch here, because, I mean, you looked at the minus 505 line, but the high fight IQ of David Dvorak, he does not leave many openings for opponents. He can get his kicking game going. He likes to fight at distance. And the only issue is this fight going to end inside the distance? And is Dvorak at 8,800 going to put up big points? I know you see the line value of 8,800, you're getting a minus 505 favorite, but for GPP purposes, you're going to need somebody to finish or land top control time, and Dvorak's not that type of fighter. So interesting spot. I'll be picking David Dvorak to win. And the question is he going to get it done inside the distance? And Ronderos is a tough kid. He's one tough hombre. So don't completely count him out here. He's gonna throw caution to the wind, and especially early. Next up, Felicia Spencer taking on Norma Dumont. We saw this line open at another book where Norma Dumont came in as a massive underdog. This line has closed significantly. Felicia Spencer, 8-2 record, minus 185 betting favorite, taking on Norma Dumont as a plus 155 underdog. You look at the DraftKings price, 7,500. This is one of those rare women's featherweight fights here. Spencer is the larger fighter, the fighter who, honestly, I think she could fight at lightweight. I'd like to see her take on Kayla at some point. The issue here is Felicia Spencer is a bit of a punching bag out there. She is not very athletic, and if she's able to put Dumont on her back, which that is a real possibility here. Dumont, Sanda background. I like Dumont's game. I do. Only issue here is if Dumont gets put on her back for an extended period of time here, I think she's going to have trouble working her way back to the feet. Spencer is overwhelming. Her top game is overwhelming. And that's more than likely. I think we do see Spencer, especially in the smaller octagon, work to land takedowns and establish top control. Dumont, I don't see her being much of a threat off of her back. The striking, Dumont, in my opinion, has a significant advantage, though she's going to have to keep this fight at range. I wish Dumont would have made bantamweight last time out, but we've seen that is a struggle for her. So moving forward, I don't know where she's going to end up fighting, because that cut to 135 is very tough, and also Spencer runs into real problems there as well. Give me Felicia Spencer in this spot. Norma Dumont, if she wins this fight, she's going to have to establish herself at range on the feet. Next up, we've got heavyweights. We've got more volatility here. We've got Justin Tafa. Look at that record, 4-2 record, been starched before, and also runs into some issues if fights hit the mat. Minus 185 betting favorite with a DraftKings price of $9,000. Taking on Jared Vanderra. Jared Vanderra with a 11-5 record. Been clipped before. Massive heavyweight. Plus 155 underdog. Interesting fight. This is a fight that could be relevant as if we're talking DraftKings. If we see Vanderra come out here, he does have a ground game that he can use here. The problem is taking Tafa to the mat. I think Tafa is going to do his best to fend Vanderra off, try to land strikes on the feet, and keep this fight at range where he has a massive striking advantage. Vanderra, though, is a big boy, and the bigger they are, the harder they fall. I think we may see Tafa come out here, land the kill shot, and we have a spectacular knockout. But if that does not happen, we got to look for paths to victory and also paths to defeat. So if Tafa is unable to land this kill shot, he could potentially get taken down here and grind it out. That is a possibility here. And I think there is a little bit of value on Vanderra, especially if you're looking at the price tag of 7,200, if he's able to stay conscious. And that may be potentially a big ask. So give me Tafa, but there are no certainties in this game. Vanderra is a bit of a live dog here. Next up, this is the people's main event, folks. We've got Yan Xiaonan with a 13-1 record. It's been a while since she's taken an L. Minus 125 betting favorite. This line has closed at some books. You actually have Esparza as a favorite now. Taking on Carla Esparza, 17-6 record, minus 105 with a DraftKings price of 7,600. I think that we're going to see Esparza be one of the more popular dog picks here, 115 pounds. You have a proven blueprint here from Esparza comes in, can take down strikers and hold them down. And it's not pretty, but she wins fights. Look what she did to Marina Rodriguez last time out. She's done it to other fighters, even against Gadelia. That was a very interesting spot. Cynthia Calvillo, we've seen her get wiped out by Suarez, but when Esparza levels up, she runs into trouble. And this is an interesting spot because you have Yan Xiaonan, who I don't think she's going to come in here and be able to develop a lifetime of wrestling with a few camps. And if she's able to stay evasive, if Yan Xiaonan is able to stay evasive, she has the ability to piece Esparza up at range. And she's very quick. The challenge, though, is if Esparza is able to close distance and get her hands on Xiaonan and land that takedown, is Xiaonan going to be able to get back to her feet? And I really think that is what this fight comes down to. And I think that's what folks see in the betting line here, that Xiaonan, if she gets grounded once, the round's over. And that is a possibility here. Very interesting fight. Esparza at a huge disadvantage on the feet. Two outcomes. Either Esparza lands the takedown, wins this fight via decision, or we have Yan Xiaonan piece Esparza up at range, stay at distance, and use her quickness, use her striking. I'm very slightly leaning Yan Xiaonan in this spot. I think that although Esparza has a proven blueprint to beat fighters like this, Xiaonan poses a bigger threat than Rodriguez and some of the other fighters because of her footwork is pretty damn good. And I've struggled with this fight. No play as far as I'm concerned at this juncture, but if you're going to tempt us with dog odds close to that on Yan Xiaonan, that may be worthy of a play. I'll be picking Yan Xiaonan, but I see at the opening line, there was value on Esparza. Very, very interesting fight. So give me Yan Xiaonan, but tough fight. I believe this fight at this point is worthy of a coin flip. And if Yan Xiaonan wins, it will look like it's a dominant performance. If Esparza wins, it is going to look dominant because you're going to have her in top control on Yan Xiaonan for the majority of the fight. So very, very slightly lean Yan Xiaonan. Main event of the evening. Very interesting matchup between two strikers. This fight should play out on the feet. You've got Rob Font, 18-4, taking on Cody Garbrandt, 12-3 record. Rob Font, older fighter, more seasoned veteran as far as a striker goes. Minus 120 at the betting window, 8,300 in DraftKings. He's coming in with a significant reach advantage. So it'll be interesting to see how Cody Garbrandt tries to get inside on Rob Font. And is Rob Font going to be quick enough to land counters on Garbrandt, who is the explosive, much faster fighter, much more athletic fighter. But the problem with Garbrandt is his fight IQ. It's so interesting because he's able to fight the game plan against Dom Cruz, where he went 5 rounds and it was a flawless performance, incredible performance, zoned in, dialed in. And then you watch a fight against TJ Dillashaw. Both of those fights, he had his moments. And then a switch gets flipped in his head and he goes berserker mode and gets caught throws caution to the wind. He does not need to do that in those fights. Did not need to do that in the Pedro Munoz fight as well. I know he started to get his legs chopped off in that spot, but the headbutt happened. He saw red, and that was it. Thought he could just go punch for punch. He's not going to want to do that against Rob Font. Rob Font could potentially pick Cody Garbrandt apart at range. I see that being a realistic outcome here, especially over the course of having 5 rounds to work with. A concern of mine is Rob Font's wrestling game and his grappling. I think that Garbrandt, although we haven't seen much of it, that he is the more well-rounded fighter in this spot. And if Garbrandt doesn't get caught, and that's a big if, because Rob Font has the ability to mind his P's and Q's. And we know the Calvin Kattar, those guys at the cartel, they fight very smart game plans. Rob Font, I understand why he's lined here as a favorite. I'm going to be going against conventional wisdom here, and I'll be picking Cody Garbrandt. Surprisingly, I've seen Rob Font run into some issues in fights. It only takes one exchange to change the complexion of a fight, and I could see Rob Font trying to stay at range here. This fight, if this fight was taking place in the larger octagon, I think we'd see Rob Font be a bigger favorite, and I may pick Rob Font in that spot. But I think that the smaller octagon is going to force a firefight here, and Cody Garbrandt is the heavier puncher who is the much more quicker fighter. And I think that is the rationale for me picking Garbrandt here, though. I totally understand why folks are on the Font side. This fight is a toss-up. It's reflective in the line. Very closely lined fight. I think in DraftKings, this fight could potentially be worthy of a stack in the main event, considering the volatility of the matchup. Though I'll be picking Garbrandt here. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning, bright and early, getting this one out. You can follow me over at MikesMMAPicks on Twitter. Been at this in DraftKings, well, prior to DraftKings, DFS MMA, since 2014. Been tracked for many years over at BetMMA.tips. Prior to that, over that at Capertech. And want to thank everybody for tuning in. You can check out my plays at MMA Oddsbreaker Premium. Go get what's yours, my friends. Have a tremendous fight day. Remember, the fights kick off at 4 p.m. Eastern. So let's get after it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.